Raise your hand if you've experienced a hug today. According to noted psychologist Virginia Satir, we need 4 hugs a day for survival, we need 8 hugs a day for maintenance, and we need 12 hugs a day for growth. Raise your hand if you typically experience 4 hugs in a day. Now, show of hands, who receives at least 8 hugs a day? Excellent. And finally, raise your hand if you're one of the fortunate few who receive 12 or more hugs a day. Human beings have skin hunger that's just as essential to meet as food hunger. Without nurturing touch, infants fail to thrive. Well, guess what? So do adults. There's an epidemic in our world right now. It's a lack of safe, nurturing touch by consent. We live in a touch-negative society where for some, touch is either sexual, abusive, coercive, limited, or non-existent. The result is a disconnected society. It shapes who we become as we develop, and it can lead to loneliness, depression, anxiety, addiction, and even suicidality. In 1983, I enrolled in Rutgers University to earn my MSW, which stands for Master of Social Work. But I sometimes think of it as Master of Saving the World. And I was there from 1983 to 1985. And I wrote a thesis on counseling practitioners' views on using touch as a therapeutic modality. I was a little bit reluctant to approach my advisor with this topic because there's a trope that says therapists shouldn't touch their clients. Why is that? Well, I can give you a bunch of reasons that we were told, including boundaries, transference, sexualizing of touch, attachment to the therapist, and finally, PTSD due to traumatic experiences around touch. Well, I can give you just as many reasons with consent for therapists to touch their clients. And that includes feeling like they matter, feeling a sense of being grounded, feeling a connection to the therapist, feeling like they can trust again, and meeting that skin hunger need that I mentioned earlier. So with the enthusiastic support of my advisor, herself a clinician, in addition to being a professor, I embarked on my research. Now remember, folks, this was the 1980s, way before Google became our brains. So that meant spending countless hours in the library with my head in a bunch of books. I studied the work of Harry Harlow, who did research with rhesus monkeys. And what he found was that the baby monkeys preferred the cloth mother who didn't provide food for them than the wire mother who did. I was even more fascinated to learn about the work of Sidney Girard, who traveled around the world, and he observed people in cafes to see how many times they touched each other in an hour's time. Not a big surprise that here in the United States, people touched each other an average of twice in an hour. Well, clearly, they weren't observing me and my friends because we are a very affectionate bunch. We kiss and hug hello and goodbye. We sit next to each other when we're in proximity, hold hands, pat arms. I call it platonic PDA. So in Puerto Rico, he found that people touched each other an average of 180 times, and in Paris, 110 times. So we got some work to do here, folks. Okay. Fast forward, and the world experienced a pandemic, literally ducking for cover when it came to touch. I was terrified in early 2020 that we would never be able to touch each other again. And I thought, how will human beings survive as a species if we can't touch each other in nurturing ways? Soon after that, I had a dream in which we could hug back to back or back to front like spooning. I'm grateful that with the advent of vaccines, I now feel comfortable hugging heart to heart. So why does touch even matter? It enhances brain development. It increases the immune system, makes us stronger. It helps bring on the happy hormones, the feel-good hormones of serotonin, oxytocin, and dopamine. It reduces pain, which means more oxytocin, less OxyContin. It reduces drug and alcohol cravings. It enhances non-sexual intimacy. It brings people together across all divides. High fives and hugging teammates has been shown to improve performance. I was blessed to have grown up in a home where touch was plentiful and nobody entered or exited without a hug. As a result, I developed into a consummate hugger. It's my joy, and it's the core of some of my work in the world. I'm one of those kind of off-the-wall people that stands on street corners with a sign that reads, "Free hugs." Most people say yes, and I'm glad about that. Some say no, and I respect it. And I encourage them to hug someone, even themselves. The party got started Valentine's Day weekend of 2014 when I brought a group of friends to 30th Street Station, which is a big train station in Philadelphia, where I'm from. Philadelphia is known as the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection, so this was the perfect locale. And we did a free hugs flash mob. Now, I deliberately chose that weekend and that day, the day after Thanksgiving, for two reasons. One is that I wanted people to understand that Valentine's Day is not just one day out of the year, love is every day. And Valentine's Day is not just for romantic partners, love is for everyone. So between the 12 of us, we estimate that we hugged at least a dozen, 200, between the 12 of us, 200 people that were making their way through the bustling station. One of them was someone that will remain in my brain and my heart forever. He was an Iraq War vet who approached us and said he was the only survivor of his platoon, and he had survivor's guilt. He said, "I thought about killing myself until I met you people. Can I join you?" So of course, we gave him his own free hug sign, and pretty soon he was off to the races, hugging his heart out. Friends started calling us hug mobsters, and I added the tagline, "Armed with love," to counteract the violent image associated with mobsters and to make it warmer and fuzzier. Within a few months, an event would happen in my life that came totally out of the blue, or so I thought, a health event. And it helped me to realize the power of hugs. On June 12th of 2014, on the way home from the gym, at the age of 55, I had a heart attack. I knew that I was in the throes of what is euphemistically called a cardiac event. I had all of the symptoms that women typically have: jaw pain and tightness, torrential sweats, searing heartburn pain front and back, palpitations, nausea, lightheadedness. Did I go straight to the hospital like a reasonable person? No. I drove home, picked up the phone, called my office and said, "I'm not feeling very well today. Could you please cancel my clients?" Click. Did I then call 911? I got back in the car and drove myself to the hospital. Now, I can only attribute that to oxygen deprivation that clouded my judgment. Don't ever, ever, ever drive yourself to the hospital in the midst of a heart attack. Within an hour after stumbling through the door of the ER of Doylestown Hospital, gasping out the words, "I think I'm having a heart attack," I was whisked up to the cardiac cath lab, where a stent was inserted into a fully occluded artery, and found myself lying in bed, tethered to machines, IVs in both arms, oxygen up my nose, and my first thought was, "Oh my God, what did you do to yourself?" I know exactly what I had done. Sleeping maybe 5 or 6 hours a night after working 12 to 14-hour days, downing energy drinks in the midst so I could stay awake. In fact, I had an energy drink the day before the heart attack. I also had family predisposition to cardiac issues, and I worked for 14 years in environments where I was exposed to second and third hand smoke. I also knew that I was burning the candle at both ends till there was no more wax left. I had literally lost touch with my own need for self-care. And what I say about that day, the woman that I was died that day to give birth to the one who's talking to you now. And she had to die because she was killing me. I took it on the road with Hug Mobsters as a result of doing cardiac rehab, where I walked through my nearby town of Doylestown, Pennsylvania. And I thought, why don't I combine the hugging with the walking, since hugs are heart-friendly? So since then, I orchestrated what I called free hug strolls. And sometimes friends accompanied me, sometimes I did it by myself. Since then, Hug Mobsters have been all throughout the United States, in Canada, and then in May of 2018, to celebrate my 60th birthday, I hugged my way across Ireland. Now, since the Irish have a reputation for being really affectionate, there were numerous hugs with willing recipients. One was a shirtless, dreads down to here young man blowing massive bubbles in Ayr Square Park in Galway. Others included a guitar-playing American expat, cyclists who had just completed a bike race, people enjoying an afternoon or evening in a pub or a cafe, and buskers performing on the street. I'm thrilled to say that thousands of hugs later, I've now celebrated my 8th cardianniversary. Nurturing touch saves lives. It saved mine, and who knows how many others. A few stories that illustrate this exquisite point. A group of us went to a veterans homeless shelter in Philadelphia, and one man there said something I will never forget as I was hugging him. I haven't been touched in 20 years. Sit with that one for a moment. Of course, I hugged him longer and let him be the first one to let go. Visiting Portland, Oregon, shortly after that, when I got out of the car with my free hug sign, a man approached me and said, "You have no idea how much I needed this. A friend was just diagnosed with cancer, and another recently jumped off a bridge. I thought about joining her." I was interviewed by a reporter from the Philadelphia Inquirer who asked me the difference between hugging a stranger, as I do with Hug Mobsters, and hugging a friend. What I told her was that when hugging someone we already know and love, we're aware of how wonderful and magical and lovable and valuable they are, and we strengthen the connection between us. When hugging a stranger, we're creating a connection and they're no longer a stranger. So, if hugging a stranger can be so beneficial and therapeutic, imagine what it would be like if, with consent, your therapist touched you on your shoulder on the way out of the session, or shook your hand when they met you for the first time. How would it feel if in the midst of grief, they offered you a hug or you requested one? To the therapists who are watching this, how do we create a touch-positive culture in our practices and make it safe for our clients to learn about touch? Now, I'm keeping in mind that each one of us has our own history and experience and feelings and comfort level with touch. I invite you to literally get in touch with your willingness to reach your clients human to human. Touch education among our clients is essential. I talk to mine about body sovereignty and consent. If they've only had the aforementioned limited, sexual, abusive, or coercive forms of touch, we talk about saying yes and no at their discretion. Whether children or adults, and I work with all ages, the rule is my body is my own and no one touches me without my approval. So how can we create together a more touch-positive world? Here are some tried and true methods. Ask first for hugging the people in your life, even if you know them well, even if you're used to hugging them. Be comfortable with someone's no to touch as readily as being at ease with their yes. Now that one might take a little bit of work. Teach children that they don't have to hug anyone if they don't want to. Learn to differentiate between sexual touch and platonic touch. Ask to have your healthy needs met. Create a touch menu. So if you're not comfortable with a full-on body hug, or someone else that you want to hug isn't, you can do a virtual hug. I did a whole bunch of that at the height of the pandemic. You could also do high fives, fist bumps, or eye hugs. You know, the kind where you smile and make eye contact. You can also do the back-to-back or back-to-front hugs that I dreamed about early in the pandemic. Together, we can create that touch positive culture. So as I close, that was my signal, I'm going to introduce you to a song called The Hug. It was written by singer-songwriter Fred Small. And the story is about a clinician who had worked in a psychiatric hospital and got fired from his job for hugging his patients with consent. He saw it as therapeutic. His boss saw it in an entirely different way, so out he went. And we're going to do the chorus, and it's a call and response. So when I sing the line, I want to hug, I invite you to sing it back. Ready? I want to hug when we say hello. No, not that part. I want to hug when it's time to go. I want to hug 'cause I want you to know I'm awfully fond of you. I want to hug. What a wonderful feeling. Want to hug. To feel you squeeze and want to hug. It certainly seems like the natural thing to do. So give yourselves a round of applause. And here's what I invite you to do. Audience in person and those watching in the world, wherever you are. Let's go out into this new world that we're co-creating, hearts and arms wide open. Together, we can create a more touch-positive society where touch is abundant, safe, nurturing, and consensual, where no one is starved for this fundamental human need. Thank you.